It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. No more money without reform. The Prime Minister holds out hope of an NHS lifeline, but says it will take a decade to deliver. The warning about the faltering health of the public finances and the failures which have left many less robust than they were a decade ago. Also tonight, the warning shot from President Putin that allowing Western weapons to be fired deep into Russia would mean direct involvement in Ukraine's war.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
Looking at Earth, dreaming of Mars, the billionaire's spacewalk, which could bring Elon Musk's mission a step closer.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats.
The dog days for one American town after Donald Trump's baseless claims that immigrants there are eating pets. Trapped like a bird in a cage, the Afghan women, in their own words, as the Taliban toughens restrictions yet again. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello, good evening. The Prime Minister may not have directly promised more money to the NHS today, but it does appear to be on offer if the service reforms. Sir Keir Starmer said the plumbing needed to be fixed before we turn on the taps. The backdrop was a damning report commissioned by the government into the state of the health service and a warning from the government's spending watchdog that the cost of providing care over the coming decades could double on current plans. We'll have more on that in a moment, but first our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has this report.
The NHS can be saved. Keir Starmer's response to a damning report into the health service.
The NHS may be in a critical condition, but its vital signs are strong. And we need to have the courage to deliver long-term reform. Major surgery, not sticking plasters.
But on the same day, new data revealed this summer was the busiest ever for A&Es in England. The Prime Minister refused to be drawn on when patients would see improvements.
If you were to speak to one single patient who's been suffering in agony for so long, what would you say to him or her about how you're going to fix the NHS and make them better in the short term?
I accept the challenge to me, which is it's going to take a long time. It's going to be measured in years, not months. And we need to have something to say for someone who's ill now, which is getting the NHS back on its feet. But we can't duck the long-term change. Through the central bit.
The Prime Minister's speech followed the publication of an investigation by Lord Darzi, which found waiting lists and waiting times are surging, with A&E queues more than doubling in the past 15 years. Too much of the NHS budget being spent in hospitals and too little in communities. And the UK has higher cancer mortality rates than comparable countries.
Many of the problems identified by Lord Darzi in his report are already well known, but now they've been laid bare in a government report. It's up to Keir Starmer to tell us how he aims to fix the NHS. But today there was no detail. There was an overview of the 10-year plan and a promise to tackle waiting lists, but not much else.
So what are the appointments looking like now?
Moving care out of hospitals and into communities will only happen with the support from NHS staff in primary care, but they're already struggling with workloads.
It's a better model, it's what patients want, but it can only happen if we're given the resources and tools. So we need to have enough GPs working. We need to have other primary care staff. We need to have buildings that actually can accommodate us. I couldn't come into my own practice this morning because we didn't have the rooms.
The government also wants to focus more on preventing illness. Restrictions on advertising for junk food touted today as a new way to keep children healthier. But so too is improving access to care.
Stephen, do you want to come on through? Right.
Steve Can is a cancer survivor. Now he's having tests for numbness in his feet. Steve is typical of patients with more complex health needs.
Ringing up for an appointment is difficult because you end up in a queue. But I find if I turn up there at 5 to 8 in the morning, I always get an appointment with the doctor that I've seen for many years.
If you want to just rest your arm on here for me.
The scale of the challenge to transform the NHS and the lives of patients like Steve is huge. Too much time has already been lost. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Well, the Darzi report argued the impact of that time lost can be seen in the deteriorating health of the nation. Healthy life expectancy did not rise during the 2010s and fell during the pandemic, meaning people in England can now only expect to live in good health until their early 60s. Cancer death rates are higher than in other countries. There's been no progress whatsoever in diagnosing cancer stage 1 or 2 between 2013 and 2021. And the number of people dying before the age of 75 in England from cardiovascular diseases, heart disease, heart attacks and strokes has risen to the highest level in 14 years. The NHS waiting list stands at 7.6 million. Long waiting times in A&E have likely caused 14,000 additional and preventable deaths a year. At the start of 2024, 2.8 million people were out of work due to long-term sickness, a huge rise on pre-pandemic levels, largely driven by poor mental health. Well, today, the OBR warned that health spending will soar over the coming decades from 7.6% of GDP to 14.5% over the next 50 years. Lord Darzi warns that there's been a shortfall of £37 billion of investment in the NHS since 2010 and that a decade of Tory austerity has left the NHS in a critical condition. Our North of England correspondent, Shingi Mararike, has been speaking to people in Bradford.
Today was another moment to rue the state of the NHS, with the Darzi report highlighting deep-rooted problems in the healthcare system. Many of those start in wider society, and are felt most in places like Bradford, one of the country's most deprived cities, where people's life expectancy is lower and health outcomes are worse. Here, people are frustrated.
They're all nice people. And I know they've a job to do, but I don't know, it seems to have gone downhill.
The problem is, unless you've got money to pay for your health, you're not going to get the services you need, and that isn't how it's supposed to be.
The Darzi report also suggests the health of the nation has deteriorated, calling Britain a society in distress. At this addiction centre, they see that firsthand.
It's kind of that circle of going back through, relapsing into drugs and then facing homelessness again, and then obviously living on the streets means that your health deteriorates.
Also in need of support are an ageing population, who often rely on the social care system that, like the NHS, is strained. At this care home, the managing director says they need more help.
Reforming the NHS without reforming social care at the same time, it's like building a house without repairing the roof.
Beneath the talk of funding, agencies and systems are real people. Some of the residents' loved ones have been waiting months to see specialists, like 89-year-old Pam's husband, who has Parkinson's.
I'm very concerned because since June his condition has suddenly deteriorated rapidly. He has trouble walking, trouble feeding himself, trouble speaking. And the man I knew is disintegrating before my eyes.
On the other side of a health system at breaking point are the communities and individuals who will suffer more as it struggles. Shingi Mararike, Sky News, Bradford.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer may have framed his plans for the NHS around there not being more money available until the health service reforms. But there was a sobering warning today over the extent of state spending across government in the years and decades to come. Well, our business correspondent Adele Robbins is here with me tonight, and the Office for Budget Responsibility making some eye-watering claims about the extent of public spending in the future and what is behind increases.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's not cheery, is it, to say the least, and unsustainable for any government looking at this as well. I mean, if that happens, this projection, we'd be spending 12% of our national income on the interest alone on this debt. It's important to remember, though, that this is a projection if nothing really changes and if there is no government action. So it assumes that the government isn't going to go and try and do anything to control its spending revenue relative to the tax, its spending relative to the tax revenue. It's assuming that demands on the public sector will rise and that government spending will match that as well. This chart shows it quite clearly, actually. The black line at the bottom there, you can see, is the total government revenue, that money coming in taxes. The red line above, you can see the first bump is the financial crisis spending, the second bump is COVID spending, and then you can see how far up it goes over the next 5 decades, how wide that gap is. That's the debt pile, effectively. Now, there are 3 main factors, the OBR say, contributing towards this. One is climate change, so spend getting to net zero. Another is geopolitical tensions, wars. And then third, which is the biggest, is the ageing population. We've been hearing about that in some of our reports today. And that's something that Professor David Miles from the OBR, who I spoke to earlier, described as the biggest factor.
It's that generates the greatest increase in demands upon government, state pensions, the health service, and it also tends to reduce the proportion of the population that we think of as of working age. So you get a double hit. You get a slower growth in the labour force, that reduces tax revenues, reduces growth somewhat, but perhaps even more important than that, just the pressure on government expenditure is that much stronger. So I think you're right, demographics is the biggest single factor by a long way.
So what do we do all about this? Well, the OBR say that it's about increasing productivity. Economists can't agree on that. They also say that difficult decisions may have to be made by governments further down the line, closing the gap between tax revenue and spending by putting pressure on both. But these are long-term decisions, and as we know, the political cycle's short-term.
Adele Robinson, thank you. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is due to arrive in Washington tonight. And when he speaks to President Biden tomorrow, some of the most hawkish comments yet from President Putin are likely to hang over that meeting. The Russian leader tonight said that if Ukraine is allowed to strike inside Russia using weapons like Britain's Storm Shadow, it would mean the direct participation of those countries in the war.
If this decision is taken, it will mean nothing less than the direct involvement of NATO countries, the United States and European countries in the war in Ukraine. This will be their direct participation, and this, of course, will significantly change the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. This will mean that NATO countries, the US and European countries are at war with Russia. And if this is so, meaning the essence of the conflict changed, we will take the respective decisions corresponding to the threats we are facing.
President Putin there. Well, let's show you the very latest pictures then of the British Prime Minister on his way to Washington. Those latest pictures landing obviously this evening. Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett joins me now. And Ivor, a perhaps calculated ramping up of the rhetoric from President Putin tonight. But how seriously should this be taken?
Well, I think the West will be taking this very seriously indeed, because it is fair to say that these are his most hawkish comments yet on this topic, and that's really saying something. Whenever it comes up, it provokes a very angry response from Vladimir Putin. He's visibly furious talking about it. It really feels like it's a personal issue to him and a red line. And that's what the West will be wondering tonight. Is it just rhetoric or is it more than that? The key phrase tonight was that NATO would be in a direct fight, he said, with Russia if it gives Ukraine this permission to use Western weapons to strike deeper inside Russia. His reasoning is that it wouldn't just be weapons and permission they'd be giving Kyiv, but the satellite capabilities to identify targets, the operational aspects of running the weapon systems, hence why he claims that NATO would be actively participating in any long-range strikes. And if that does happen, he said that Russia would be forced to take appropriate decisions. He didn't spell out what those would be, but that's exactly what Keir Starmer and Joe Biden will be weighing up when they meet in the White House tomorrow. Could Vladimir Putin follow through on a threat he's made a few months ago to arm the West's enemies, to target to strike Western targets abroad? Could he follow through on the numerous nuclear threats he's made in recent months? Basically, is it worth risking Russia's wrath?
Ivor in Moscow, thank you. Now, it was a high-risk endeavour essential to a billionaire's dreams of sending humans to Mars. And Elon Musk's life mission took one floating step closer today after a fellow billionaire became the first amateur astronaut to walk in space. Jared Isaacman was trying out a spacesuit that Mr Musk hopes can be mass-produced for any Mars mission, as our science correspondent Thomas Moore explains.
To cheers from Mission Control, Jared Isaacman hauled himself from the relative safety of his capsule and emerged to stand in the void of space, 400 miles above planet Earth.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
The first spacewalk by a non-professional astronaut on a mission funded by the tech billionaire himself, and just a thin experimental spacesuit between him and the certain death of a vacuum.
Space is trying to kill you. You wouldn't, without the protection of a spacesuit or a vehicle, survive very long at all in space. Spacewalks have been very much a part of the sort of state-run systems in spaceflight in terms of Roscosmos, NASA, and ESA and stuff. So it's amazing to see a private individual, a private enterprise doing that.
The hatch is open on Dragon. First view from a helmet cam.
With the hatch open and no protective airlock, the entire spacecraft was exposed to the vacuum of space. Even those staying on board wore spacesuits to stay alive.
Stand in the door and then step outside.
Then it was the turn of Sarah Gillis, a SpaceX engineer.
Really cool to see one of our own out there. That's awesome.
This spacewalk was all about testing the suit. Elon Musk wants to send astronauts to build bases on the Moon and Mars. They'll need comfort and flexibility.
It looks very practical, and I think, as you say, it could be mass-produced. If we're ever going to send a lot of people out into space in serious numbers, then we have to be able to build these things more quickly and at lower cost.
For the crew of Polaris Dawn, this was a triumph. Only the commander has ever been to space before, and that was just once. Yet they pulled off a daring spacewalk, and they made it look easy. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
Now to the small American town thrust into the spotlight after Donald Trump falsely claimed that immigrants there are eating pet cats and dogs. The unfounded claims began picking up traction last Friday when a Facebook post among residents of Springfield, Ohio, accused Haitians of killing and eating local pets. There'd been similar allegations, also without evidence, at an earlier City Commission meeting. But it spread more widely on Monday when Donald Trump's running mate J.D. Vance posted about it on his X account. Then Donald Trump, during Tuesday's presidential debate, said in Springfield they're eating the dogs, prompting Springfield officials to step in and declare that there is no credible evidence of any such crime. So how then are the residents of Springfield taking their moment in the presidential spotlight? Our US correspondent Mark Stone is there tonight. Mark.
Anna, good evening from a very sunny and warm Springfield here in the centre of America. Springfield, Ohio is a place I didn't expect to be today. It is a place that has become a political storm, the centre of a political storm, as this election cycle takes another extraordinary twist.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
It was an extraordinary claim. So what is really going on in Springfield, Ohio?
I see a lot of pets that have disappeared.
Really?
On Facebook.
What do you know? What have you seen?
I know all our ducks are gone.
What do you think about it? Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it, but I haven't seen anything really.
Yeah. And you're not worried about your dog?
No.
And who's eating them?
I have no idea.
But then a man who didn't want to be on camera with a hint of how these conspiracies are seeded.
I've never seen nothing going on with the dog and the cat, except what I've seen on TikTok with the Springfield police.
Yeah.
Arresting the lady for eating a cat.
Yeah.
That's.
And she was from Ohio.
No, I think she's from Haiti, wasn't she?
Why'd you kill the cat?
This is the video he's seen. Police footage of a woman being arrested for allegedly killing and eating a cat. Yes, but she isn't a Haitian migrant. She is American. She was born here. And this isn't Springfield either. Across this town, we have not found anyone who has seen pet-eating immigrants. The dogs seem safe. The cats are roaming loose. The instinct then may be to laugh at this Trumpian rhetoric. Indeed, the Haitians of Springfield can see the funny side too.
The Haitian don't hitting the cat, the dog. No, it's not no culture to hitting that.
Montes, look.
But within this cat and dog story, there are some actual truths, because there are huge challenges here over immigration.
This is your passport and your paperwork.
Vitio is one of 15,000 to have arrived here in this town from war-torn Haiti since 2020. The pressures on services and society are understandable.
You left your country, you know what, you left your country, working, go school, study. It's okay.
Casey Rollings runs the centre.
How did you feel when you heard Donald Trump's words the other night?
I was physically ill. Still am. I can't even react. I mean, I can't even repeat it. It's just unfathomable to me. But that's what happens when hysteria is spread, and, all kinds of fictional narratives. And it's really, really doing harm to our world.
And so there it is, the anatomy of a conspiracy about cats and dogs in a country where there are so many different truths.
So a really interesting day, and what is so clear to me is that there are such divided group of people, citizens here, some of whom, the majority we are told, welcome the migrants here, do recognise the challenges, but a minority who really don't. And I think that is something that is replicated across this country. Migration is a key issue. It's one that came up, as we heard at the debate the other night. Incidentally, Donald Trump has said tonight, Anna, that he will not do another debate. He doesn't believe he needs to do another debate, although Kamala Harris had offered to do one. So that may be the last we see of these two clashing, and quite a night it was.
Mark Stone in Springfield, Ohio. Thank you. 5 days after Asia's most ferocious storm this year hit Vietnam, the number of people known to have been killed there has reached nearly 230. While the worst of the flooding from Typhoon Yagi looks to have passed, water is still neck-high in some places, including streets of the capital, Hanoi. The devastation could also affect global supply chains, as Vietnam hosts large multinational companies which manufacture goods for export to the US, Europe and elsewhere. Sky News has learned that former Daily Telegraph owner Conrad Black has been linked to a takeover bid for the newspaper group. Lord Black is touted by former colleagues as backing the bid, which is being spearheaded by the owner of the New York Sun. He was jailed in the US for fraud in 2007, spending 3.5 years behind bars. Donald Trump, as president, later pardoned him in 2019. Carry On and Coronation Street star Kenneth Cope has died at the age of 93. He also played the titular ghost detective Marty Hopkirk in the ITV Supernatural series Randall and Hopkirk Deceased. His family, in a statement through Cope's former agent, said Ken passed away yesterday peacefully in his sleep with his wife and family by his side. One woman describes the feeling as being like a bird in a cage. Another asks, can you imagine yourself in this situation? The voices of Afghan women talking about their restricted lives since the Taliban returned to power. One former female politician told us today it feels like history is repeating itself as she and others joined a conference on women's rights. Our correspondent, Sabah Chowdhury, has more.
I'm one of those Afghan girls who had big dreams for the future.
As mother, I am worried about my daughter's future.
The dreams of thousands of girls like me remained unfulfilled.
These are the voices of women in Afghanistan.
Since the Taliban takeover 3 years ago, they say we don't hear their voices in public. So, in private today, they've shared their stories with Sky News.
During the day, if I need something, even bread or water, we have to wait until my husband comes.
Can you really imagine yourselves in this situation? These are our emotions and feelings that I share with you today.
Many of the Taliban's restrictions focus on women. For example, Afghan girls over 12 haven't been to school or university in 1,095 days. Women are also banned from working most jobs and are prohibited from places like gyms, parks and salons. And new morality laws require women to not only publicly conceal their bodies and faces, but now also their voices. The UN has concerns, warning Afghan women are slowly becoming faceless and voiceless shadows. So now, in an act of defiance, over 130 Afghan women have gathered in exile here in Albania.
It's kind of history repeating itself. Empathy and sympathy and being the victim is not enough. That's why we are together here, because we want to, create a narrative of our own and see how we can lead this change.
A change desperately called for by women in Afghanistan.
Our life is like a bird in a cage, waiting to fly, but afraid of breaking its wings.
We also want education like you. We also want jobs like you. We also want to be independent like you. I hope one day we Afghan women can get our rights and be independent in making a decision about our life and about our future.
A simple request. Their life in their hands. Sabah Chowdhury, Sky News.
Now, for some prominent MPs, it's a way of getting TV onto their CV and, likely more importantly, earning extra income to supplement their parliamentary salary. Paid media appearances for MPs, could those soon be banned? As our political correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
What's it like being at home with the kids? Are they seeing more of Dad?
Join me on GB News, live at 7 p.m.
The politician come media personality. This lucrative side gig could soon become a thing of the past. The government has already banned MPs from taking on advisory and consultancy roles. Now a new select committee is considering a crackdown on paid media roles.
There is a deep distrust of politics and politicians in this country because we have had an era of disrepute, of sleaze, of scandal, of cronyism, and it's important that we turn the page on that.
That trust in politics fell to new lows in 2021, when the Tory MP Owen Paterson was found to have broken lobbying rules while engaging in private sector consultancy work. Labour made putting an end to scandals like this a manifesto promise. And proponents say a ban on second jobs is the way to do it.
You don't want conflicts of interest. You don't want Nigel Farage saying things in the House of Commons in order to get more headlines, in order to drive viewers to his show.
Others aren't buying it.
The people of Ashfield trust me immensely. They trust me to be an MP and they trust me to be a presenter on GB News. That's why they voted me back in. A lot of people are motivated by money. They want to provide for their families, for their children. They want to leave a little bit for them. If I could save a bit of money up in whatever time I've got left on this place and leave it to my children, then so be it. That's what I want to do. Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World.
Mr Anderson made close to £135,000 in extra work during the last Parliament from paid media gigs. He wasn't alone. This Parliament so far, since the 5th of July, MPs have made a total of more than £746,000 from outside work. Nigel Farage is by far the top earner, making more than £137,000 in extra work. When it comes to lobbying and conflicts of interest, the line between right and wrong can be a blurry one. Restricting second jobs offers a blunt solution, but is it really the right one? Well, the jury's out on that, with some warning that it could weaken our politics by reducing the breadth and depth of experience that MPs can bring to the job. Whether they like it or not, however, the gig could soon be up.
Lee, cheers, good to see you.
Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
And finally, the singer Jon Bon Jovi was already a legend to many of his fans. He may have just won one more. The 62-year-old was pictured on CCTV helping a woman step away from the ledge of a bridge in Nashville, Tennessee. He's wearing a dark jacket and trousers on this video. Is seen approaching and then talking to her before she is helped to safety. He'd been filming a music video nearby, and local police have thanked the star for his help. Well, don't forget, if you have found any of this distressing, you can contact Samaritans for free on 116123 or email them at joe@samaritans.org. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the broadcaster and commentator Alex Andreou and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. Welcome and great to see both of you. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Times, which says long-range missiles deal means war. A warning there from President Putin. Back with that and more, of course, in just a moment.
day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
There you go. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, our top stories. And the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has arrived in Washington tonight. News just in there, saying the UK does not seek any conflict with Russia. He was speaking after President Putin said allowing Ukraine to use Western weapons to fire deep into his country would mean their direct participation in the war. Well, earlier in the day, the Prime Minister said there would be no new money for the NHS without reform after a stark review laid bare the health service's problems. And Donald Trump has declared that he will not participate in any further debates with White House rival Kamala Harris ahead of November's election. Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and commentator Alex Andreou and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. Great to see both of you. So let's see what's on the front pages then, starting with the Times. It leads with the war in Ukraine and a stark message from President Putin that the US and Britain will be at war with Russia if they let Ukraine use long-range missiles inside the country. The Guardian also covering this, carrying remarks made by the Prime Minister on his way to Washington in response to that threat. He said Russia illegally started the war and can end it any time. The Telegraph carries a warning from the Foreign Secretary about what is at stake. He said it's vital that Ukraine receives the weapons it needs ahead of what will be a pivotal winter of fighting. The Eye, meanwhile, reporting on new junk food advertising restrictions, which will come into force next October as part of the plan to save the NHS, with the aim of shielding children from obesity and the harms of processed food. Daily Mail also covering that story, giving Sir Keir Starmer a new nickname. The Metro calls rock star Jon Bon Jovi a guitar hero after he persuaded a distraught woman not to jump off a bridge. The Financial Times carries the warnings from the Office for Budget Responsibility that public spending needs to be brought under control, or else the debt generated by it could one day be 3 times higher than the UK's GDP. And without explaining why, the Star's front page tells us that rubbing a wooden chair can reduce stress. I always touch wood. Anyway, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. Let's head to Alex and Salma then. Some big stories to talk about. Sir Keir Starmer, we've got pictures of him on the flight to Washington. The news that he's just landed. He has a critical meeting with Joe Biden tomorrow amidst a warning from Putin about the use of US and UK long-range missiles fired from Ukraine into Russia, Salma.
I don't think anybody can deny that this is an important moment in diplomatic relations in relation to this conflict. I think what's interesting is this discussion is happening between Britain and the US, and Putin feels the need to intervene here and talk about this threat of escalation, which is something that we have all feared. Is there any move that would create hostility to the point where he could potentially use nuclear weapons in this conflict? So I think there's bated breath around that issue. I think what is apparent from all the reporting that we're seeing as well is that this is not an easy decision. We know that there's been stalling from Kiev in terms of their advancement against Russia. We know that there is no end game in sight for this conflict yet, so nobody wants the tensions to rise. But I certainly think that the fact that the British Prime Minister has gone over to discuss this with the US President makes this a big moment.
I mean, the really fundamental question is, would Russia deem it was at war with the UK and the US? And that is a big thing to chat about in the Oval Office or elsewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've been trying to find the other times this has been threatened, and there's been a few. In June, Russia threatened something similar. In February, Russia threatened something similar. And I find now that in December 2023, Russia threatened strikes into Western countries if F-16s were based on NATO bases. And then in April that year, it threatened nuclear strikes if F-16s were provided. And in the spring of 2022, it threatened nuclear escalation if tanks were given to Ukraine. So the rhetoric, I mean, you never know when he means it and when a mistake might happen that actually does provoke an escalation. But this kind of hawkish rhetoric has been with us for a long time.
And that is why Bradleys, Abrams, Challenger 2s, F-16s, you name it, whatever it is, has been delayed to Ukraine. And in a sense, that hawkish rhetoric has worked against the West. So what makes the difference now that they deem these long-range missiles to be fired into Russia would make a difference to Ukraine?
Well, there's a strategic calculation, which is how badly do we need to win, or how badly do we need to be able to bring Putin to the negotiating table where we're willing to come to some kind of settled or some kind of settlement. But I also think that, I mean, if you will, we'll move on to it, but sort of the Foreign Secretary's interview in The Telegraph, he's a lot more sort of strident with the rhetoric about we cannot let Ukraine lose. So I think it's important to ask yourself the strategic question on what does victory look like, or what does a settlement look like?
I think there's been two things have happened recently. The first one is the uncertainty over the US election. I think that has really put a fire under leaders to push for a quick resolution, because they don't know what happens after January if we're looking at a Trump White House. And that's obviously preying on everyone's mind. And the second is, I feel there's been a change of tone in the rhetoric from the European Union. I think in the summits we've had recently, most notably the first one after Labour came into power, there was a sense that this drag was actually costing European economies a lot more money than going for a quick and decisive resolution. This drip that was basically guaranteeing
But here's the other part of it, which is the situation in Moscow is quite difficult to read as well, because we hear of stories about Putin's regime being destabilised, his trusted advisors being moved away, more family members coming into those key functions in government. So there is also this difficult element of trying to understand whether his desperation will lead to something more dramatic in terms of his reaction to our decisions, or whether actually we're talking about an endgame scenario, and that is not clear, and it certainly will not be clear even with all the intelligence at the US and British government's disposal.
Yes, the Guardian quoting what they called a plain huddle. We've seen the pictures already. Starmer tells Putin, you started this war, you can end it any time. And asked on the flight, whether the UK, well, he said the UK does not seek any conflict with Russia. That is not our intention in the slightest. Mr. Putin, of course, just to quote everybody, said that allowing long-range strikes would mean that NATO countries, the United States, the European countries are at war with Russia. That is a stark thing to say.
But this is about going into Russian territory. And so one of the examples that you just cited, Alex, was in reaction to Kiev's forces moving into Crimea, which then obviously had become Russian territory at this point. And so this is also about the fact that the integrity of Russia and its borders could be compromised. That is going to be a very difficult thing for Putin to be able to explain away internally. And if there is that sort of rising challenge to him as an individual in his position, then you can see why this is a bigger deal for him.
More quotes from Keir Starmer. They started this conflict and Ukraine's got a right to self-defence. To reiterate, it was Russia who started this in the first place. They caused the conflict. They're the ones who are acting unlawfully, and Ukraine obviously has the right to self-defence. That is why we've been providing training and capability, etc., etc. We know storm shadows have been fired into places like Crimea, for example, but why wait until a plane carrying, weapons gets into Ukrainian airspace before it can be targeted? That's the question people are asking.
Because there is a ratcheting, I think. There is a sort of aggressive move met by an aggressive response. It is then left to calm down a little bit, and half an aggressive move is made. That's what we've seen, because the F-16s maybe didn't go into Ukraine at that point, but they went into the Ukrainian conflict 3 months, 4 months later. So that's what happens. It's this weird cha-cha of war, one step forward, one step back. And the one thing you can say for certain right now, prosaic as it might be, is that the pieces are moving around the board right now. We're not entirely clear what the situation will be once they've assumed the new positions, but there is movement.
OK, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll hear and see more of Sir Keir Starmer alongside Joe Biden, obviously, on Friday. Perhaps more pictures later as well. In the meantime, let's go to the Daily Telegraph. Their story that low-paid migrant workers are an immediate drain on the public purse, with each one, the paper tells us, costing taxpayers more than £150,000 by the time they hit state pension age. And this is the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Well, Alex is an economist by trade.
Right.
And we were discussing this earlier when the papers arrived. And actually, he changed my view on the story. So I'd love you to sort of explain the detail behind the story.
I'm first and foremost a migrant, and that, I think, is what changed your view. The Telegraph treats those OBR figures as if they are forever. People's lives are not linear. Someone arrives low-skilled, just as I did in 1990, but also studying at the same time, improving my English. Then I had a slightly better job while I went to university. Then I graduated from university and had a much better job that paid a lot of tax into the system. So the idea that someone arrives low-skilled and then stays low-skilled until they're of pensionable age is not realistic. That's not how people's lives work, basically. And if you look further into the piece, you find out that while low-paid migrants are a drain on public finances, the OBR found that the average migrant worker paid more in tax than they received in public services compared with British-born workers, mainly because they were not educated in the UK, which makes perfect sense to me. And so, isn't that what we should look at, on average, whether a migration economy is working for us or not, I guess?
OK. We have so much to pack in. We've overrun. We will come to junk food advertising as part of the preventative healthcare plans that we've heard from the government today. Also, what is it like to take a spacewalk when you're not actually an astronaut? Talk about that as well.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Wall Street! High Street!
Well, the plan seems to be to head to the police station where the policeman who fired the shots was based.
And everything, you know, his memories is all gone.
In almost every corner, this town has been completely destroyed by the fire. I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
Trump out of the White House.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
I get that that's where the media likes to go.
Well, it's not. It's where many of the people we've talked to here like to go. I report on the biggest stories from around the world. This is a town that is effectively encircled by the Russians. You say it's all fabrication, what's happening in Bucha?
Destroyed my nation.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our planet. Yeah, I can hear now quite a few explosions in the distance here in Jerusalem. A very violent series of confrontations here. What do you think of ISIS?
Everybody here knows the truth of ISIS.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent. We can reveal that the driver who hit Harry Dunn is 42-year-old Anne Sakoulas.
Just met the president and we never thought we'd get this far.
This is what they're up against, is back-breaking work. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have.
What would you do if this place wasn't open?
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
It's really scary.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
This conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. With me once again, Alex Andreou and Salma Shah. Welcome back to both of you. Alex, junk food TV ad ban before 9 p.m. We heard the focus today after the Lord Darzi report about preventative medicine. Does that fit into that scheduling then?
It does fit into that scheduling, but more like displacement activity than actual action. It's like we haven't got the money or a plan yet to tackle all the big things, so we're going to do this little thing instead, just to look busy.
I mean, this has been talked about for ages, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, remind me.
I mean, a big thing about this is how do you define junk food? That's the first massive hurdle, right? Because if you're going down the route of what they call ultra-processed food, then like a lot of vegan stuff that we consider quite healthy and that actually is not bad for you is ultra-processed. So does that include seitan or tofu?
See, now you're having a very interesting, serious policy discussion. The thing that struck me about this is that this was Boris Johnson's. This is Boris Johnson's idea. And I think that was also shelved previously, partly because they weren't sure about the impact of it, and partly because, it was, as the Mail says here, nanny state-ish. And I am not, that kind of conservative that's really anti the nanny state. I think there's place for good regulation. But, as the Mail says in its comment piece, do you really want to say to Mr. Kipling you're not allowed to try and market your cakes so somebody can have a treat at tea time? But it is about the difference between having a treat at tea time that's something sugary and ultra-processed versus having a terrible diet. And I'm not sure that junk food advertising bans deal with the really holistic issue of the fact that people's diets, people's exercise is really poor.
Tooth decay, young children, that's why they're in hospital. It's all part
I mean, the only thing I'd counter to that, first of all, I'm an old-style socialist. You get actual nannies. We quite like a nanny state because that's the only nanny we'll ever get. And the thing is to nudge the industry, I think, towards better choices. So if you want to be advertised before the watershed, exactly, reduce the amount of fat in your product, or reduce the amount of salt in your product, and make it so that it doesn't go into this category where it's really bad for kids or whatever. So I think it's more targeted at the industry rather than, like, when they targeted sugar in fizzy drinks, what you saw immediately was that the sugar content of fizzy drinks dropped dramatically across the board.
It was actually my policy area where we did that in government.
I know, that's why I brought it up, to butter you up, you see.
That's why she's all about questioning results. That's the point, isn't it, really? Let us move on to the Financial Times, this amazing footage we saw today of this spacewalk. People have suggested walk is an exaggeration of what happened. But anyway, nonetheless, you have citizen astronaut poking his head out in the vacuum of space, in a brand new spacesuit, in a brand new everything, all sort of experimental. Brave, foolhardy, you name it. He's a billionaire, satisfying a billionaire's craving to get to Mars.
I mean, and I guess I might have an objection about it on moral grounds, but actually he was essentially a volunteer member of staff testing out a new suit. So in those circumstances, I don't have... It seems like quite a good synergy, basically. The company's getting someone to pay them to do a job that they would have to send someone else to do out there anyway, and so that makes sense to me. But yeah, it seems a lot of money to basically just go out the sunroof. I mean, that's what happened.
Even the late Stephen Hawking said we had to find another planet in 100 years. So,
well,
you know.
yeah, I mean, Mars seems like the optimum place to go, but I'll tell you something, you're not getting me up there, tethered or not tethered, not a chance.
Yeah. Loads of stories we haven't got to. We will have to persist with our efforts. Alex and Salma, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. Now, to the weather then. A northerly flow is bringing a taste of autumn. You've probably noticed it already. Turn milder, though, for the weekend. A mostly dry and cold start to Friday. An extensive ground frost and local air frost in the countryside. UK staying mainly sunny and dry through the morning. Scotland and East Anglia will see isolated showers. Ireland will be largely fine too, but cloud will increase from the west by lunchtime. So temperatures will remain a little below average. It'll feel a bit warmer than previous days, especially in the sunshine. The afternoon will bring a little rain to northwest Ireland and the Western Isles on strengthening winds. Elsewhere, staying largely fine into the evening. Well, Sky News at 11 is next. Our press preview continues. Keir Starmer has arrived in Washington, saying the UK does not seek any conflict with Russia.